Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Bei said, the 3rd Soul Engineer Legion will be named the 4th Soul Engineer Legion. It'll be composed of 1,500 Soul Masters. Comparatively speaking, this batch of Soul Masters will be of lower cultivations, and they'll only be equipped with one type of soul tool, our modified, all-terrain self-driving fort. Every fort can only carry 5 people. As a result, this Soul Engineer Legion will be equipped with 300 such forts. After hearing such a number, Huo Yuhao was astonished. He first thought of the sheer amount of rare metals they needed to produce so many self-driving forts and Zhuge divine crossbow cannons. Bei instantly saw through what he was thinking and took the initiative to answer his doubts before he even posed his question. To conserve resources and increase the speed of manufacture, we've hired blacksmiths from the Heavenly Soul, Doling and Star Luo empires on high payrolls. They'll proceed with the manufacturing of the outer shells of the cannons and forts. All the metal outer shells will be built using fine iron. Although this can greatly reduce the defensive tenacity and durability of these cannons and forts, it's the only way to manufacture so many soul tools as quickly as possible. According to our estimates, the 3 Soul Engineer Legions should be fully equipped within a year's time. Relentless. This was Huo Yuhao's immediate reaction after he heard Bei's words. The Academy is really going all out this time. These 3 Soul Engineer Legions consist of a total of 2,700 Soul Masters, including more than 10 titled Doluo. This is indeed the strength of Shrek Academy. The Sun Moon Empire would never expect them to manufacture the outer shells of such large-scale soul tools using fine iron. After all, soul tools were precious in the sense that they were durable. How could fine iron compare to rare metals? At least, it was unlikely that the Sun Moon Empire would use fine iron to manufacture soul tools. However, the Tang sect was going to do just that. The only advantage that the Tang sect had over the Sun Moon Empire was the mechanical blueprints for the Tang sect's hidden weapons that originated from the ancient Tang sect. Huo Yuhao could guess without even asking. Apart from the most critical parts, all of the soul tools they were going to manufacture were likely going to be using fine iron, fine steel, and other ordinary metals. Even though they were also very strong, their strength could only be realized by the Tang sect using those mechanical blueprints. Teacher Shen, you've really tapped into the full potential of the Tang sect. Bei said, now that the first batch of soul tools for the 3 Soul Engineer Legions has been completed, we've been conducting training every day. Perhaps our 3 Soul Engineer Legions aren't strong enough to change the entire situation of the war, but they'll be a force to be reckoned with. When needed, we can attack and defend. Huo Yuhao said, eldest senior, I have a suggestion. Bei nodded and answered, go on. Huo Yuhao continued, I suggest that we specially divide some people to specialize in manufacturing stationary soul cannon shells. A stationary soul cannon's greatest advantage lies in its effective range. Since we can use fine iron to create the main structure of our soul tools, we can also manufacture cannon shells. As long as we reduce their strength below a certain standard, fine iron and steel should be able to handle them. Bei furrowed his brow and said, we'll only be able to manufacture Class 3 stationary soul cannon shells then. Wouldn't that be too weak? Huo Yuhao's eyes flashed and he replied, it might not be. If we thicken the layer of fine iron and steel on the outer shell, we should be able to increase the soul cannons to at least a Class 4 standard. Furthermore, these outer shells can be manufactured by ordinary blacksmiths. We can add a very thin layer of rare metals as the innermost layer. In that case, we should be able to create Class 4 stationary soul cannon shells. Although the destructiveness of a Class 4 stationary soul cannon shell is only roughly at the standard of a Class 5 soul cannon, we'll still be able to gain a very huge advantage in long-range attacks, if we have enough of them. They'll be especially useful for aerial soul tools. Given my spirit power, we can specialize in using stationary soul cannons to attack the Sun Moon Empire's aerial surveillance soul tools that within a 10-kilometer radius. Destroying aerial surveillance soul tools doesn't require too much power either. After hearing Huo Yuhao's words, Bei Bei nodded repeatedly and said, "All right. If you think this is plausible, I'll arrange for you to find teacher Shen when this meeting is over. After that, you can quickly perform tests and come up with a proposition before we commit to anything. We don't have many soul engineers in the Doluo continent, but we have many blacksmiths. Hire another batch of them." "All right." After this, Bei Bei introduced all the details relating to the Tang sect to everyone. There were simply too many matters to deal with in the Tang sect right now. Bei Bei was also very relieved now that Huo Yuhao and the rest had returned. At least there would now a bunch of them helping him with all the work. Otherwise, he would have died from fatigue. He wouldn't even have enough time to search for the Blue-Silver Emperor. After the meeting was over, Huo Yuhao left the room and was prepared to find Shen Ziwen. After seeing the Death God and learning about some soul tools on the battlefield, he wanted to discuss all of it with him. "Hey, wait a minute." Someone called to Huo Yuhao, causing him to turn around perplexedly. He only saw Nan Qiuqiu chasing after him with a grin on her face. "What's wrong, Qiuqiu? You're still gloating." Huo Yuhao laughed. Nan Qiuqiu snorted and replied, "Am I that sort of person? I'm here to help you." Huo Yuhao was curious as he asked, "Help me? Help me with what?" Nan Qiuqiu chuckled and said, "Do you want to go out and play? I have an idea that will let eldest senior agree to let you go out." "What?" Huo Yuhao appeared delighted. He didn't really want to leave, but he might have a chance to bump into Wang Donga if he left Shrek City. Huo Yuhao was doubtful as he asked, "What idea could you have?" Nan Qiuqiu snorted and said, "You just need to agree to one of my conditions before I'll bring you along." "What's the condition? Tell me," Huo Yuhao asked. Nan Qiuqiu paused for a moment and she turned slightly red. After that, she answered, "I want you to be my boyfriend for a few days." "What?" Huo Yuhao was stunned for a moment. He was a little embarrassed as he looked at her and shook his head helplessly before turning around and leaving. "Hey!" Nan Qiuqiu stomped her foot in anger. "Am I that annoying? Can't you even pretend to be my boyfriend?" Huo Yuhao shook his head and replied, "I'm sorry, Qiuqiu. We can negotiate other things, but I can't accede to this request of yours. You should know my feelings for Donga. If I agree to your request, I'll be hurting you. That won't be good for either of us. I'm really sorry. You're a nice lady, and I'm sure you'll find your prince charming in the future. I'll go and find teacher Shen first." After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Of course, Huo Yuhao could sense the feelings that Yi Gai and Nan Qiuqiu had for him. It was just that he was overly sad, because of what had happened to Wang Donga and Wang Qiu'er, and really didn't wish to associate himself with anyone else. If he were more determined when Wang Qiu'er got close to him, the tragedy might not have happened. This was why he was now very disciplined with regards to matters of the heart. Even though Tang Wutong looked almost identical to Wang Donga, he still decided to immediately steer clear from her after verifying that she wasn't Wang Donga. He didn't want to give her and himself the wrong impression. She had her own feelings. When a guy and a girl stayed around each other too much, it was inevitable that feelings would grow between them. Huo Yuhao didn't wish for such a situation to happen. This was why he rejected Nan Qiuqiu so readily. Perhaps this might hurt her in the short term, but it was better than hurting her after she was even more emotionally involved. Humph. Guys are all so heartless. I don't want any Prince Charming. Don't leave. Let me finish talking first. Nan Qiuqiu was fuming as she pursued Huo Yuhao, stopping him in his tracks. Huo Yuhao sighed slightly and asked, "Qiuqiu, what else do you want?" She snorted and said, "It's a good thing for you. I still have to chase you for this. But you're so unwilling." Huo Yuhao was apologetic, "I'm sorry, Qiuqiu. Ever since Qiu'er left and Donga fell into a coma, I've not been feeling very good. If there's anything that I've done to offend you, please forgive me." Nan Qiuqiu glared at Huo Yuhao and said, "Do you know how much I hate you? It's always like this, acting so kind and treating others as outsiders. Even if you can't be my boyfriend, can't you at least be an ordinary friend? As she spoke, her eyes had already turned red. Huo Yuhao's heart softened and he said, "We've always been friends. We're even partners, even closer than ordinary friends." Nan Xiuqiu's expression became milder and she said, "That's more acceptable. All right, I shall not delay you. I'll get straight to the point. Do you remember my mom mentioning that there's a mysterious place where the Earth Dragon sect is that she wishes to give to the Tang sect?" Huo Yuhao was moved and he said, "Yes, Elder Nan did mention it before. Why? Haven't we gone to retrieve it yet?" Nan Xiuqiu said, "One look and I can tell that you didn't fully understand her words. My mom was telling you that the place is likely to be accessible only to you. As the temperature inside is extremely low, ordinary soul masters can't possibly survive inside, much less venture deep into it. According to the information that our ancestors left behind, there's likely to be a mine inside. This mine is also very strange, it's extremely cold inside. We can only predict that there's some kind of rare metal inside, but we can't tell how rare it is. If you're interested, you can go and take a look since you've nothing much to do now and the war situation has more or less stabilized. If you retrieve rare metals, you can bring some of them back. So it's about this matter." Huo Yuhao finally understood, and said with gratitude, "Thanks, Xiuqiu. I'll return and ask eldest senior for permission first." Nan Xiuqiu nodded and said, "All right, I'll go and find my mother too. I'll ask if she's free within this period of time. Hi, our sect's territory has already been occupied by the Sun-Moon Empire. If we return, we must be careful too." Huo Yuhao smiled and said, "No worries, it won't be some kind of death trap. We've already overcome the death god. Do we need to be afraid of ordinary soldiers from the Sun-Moon Empire?" Nan Xiuqiu laughed and said, "Eldest senior just lectured you, but you've already gone back to your old ways. Aren't you afraid that I'll report you to him?" Huo Yuhao laughed, "I'm not afraid. You aren't that kind of person. You're the most loyal." Nan Xiuqiu snorted and said, "It seems like we can only be good brothers in this life." Huo Yuhao chuckled, "It's great to be good brothers. See, I'm so good to my brothers. All right, I'll find teacher Shen first. We'll talk when we get back." In the next few days, Huo Yuhao was completely busy. His discussion with Xian Zuan took 6 hours, before he invested his energy into developing stationary soul cannon shells. Xian Zuan handed this job to him. If it was Xian Zuan, he would find it very easy to complete this task. As for the Earth Dragon sect, Bei Bei allowed him to proceed thereafter he was done with this task. During the breaks in his experiments, Huo Yuhao wanted to make a trip to the Sea God's Island and ask Elder Shen about a problem he had faced during his cultivation. It was just that he found it difficult to turn his attention away from his experiments after he started on them. He only found the time after he completed all his experiments. After the Class 4 stationary soul cannon shells were completed, they were only 2/3 as strong as normal Class 4 stationary soul cannon shells. However, their effective range was almost the same. This was the result of the materials used. Furthermore, Xian Zuan was already very pleased that they could make it this far. Huo Yuhao had used a few techniques in their construction. Amongst them, the most important technique was the delayed activation component of the stationary soul cannon shells. When such cannon shells were fired, they normally relied on the thrust at their tail ends to reach far away before exploding. The components that gave them their thrust and power had to be separated using a strong rare metal. The stronger a cannon shell was, the more precious the rare metal needed to separate the components. However, Huo Yuhao went against conventional logic this time in his design. He used a new activation technique. First, as these soul cannon shells were specially designed for Zhuge divine crossbows, Huo Yuhao fully tapped into their thrusting force. The cannons were able to fire the cannon shells around 2 kilometers in distance. If the shells were detonated within these 2 kilometers, a lot of energy is undoubtedly wasted. Huo Yuhao didn't separate the components, but placed them together in the same compartment. At the bottom of the cannon shells, he used some mechanical principles and created a delayed activation component. When these shells were fired by the cannons, they would automatically be activated. However, as it didn't have the thrust component, the power component should directly blow apart. However, with the delayed activation component, the power component was meant to blow apart after some time. It would take a few seconds. Within these few seconds, the shell would have flown more than 2 kilometers away. When the power component was about to be detonated, the central detonation component would take effect. The power component was divided into two parts. One of these parts was the second thrust component. This second thrust component would increase the speed of the shell once again, reaching the speed of an original Class 4 shell and flying far away. Due to the initial propulsion, it just needed to increase the speed of the shell. In this way, a lot of energy was conserved. Although the strength of the power component was slightly reduced as it was smaller, it was important to remember that the outer shell and mechanical components were made completely from fine iron. It was already very difficult to achieve this. Such a cannon shell would be 2/3 as strong as usual, but its cost would only be 1/10 of normal. This was not even including the fact that some rare metals couldn't be found on the market. It was indeed possible to mass-produce such cannon shells. Of course, Huo Yuhao's research only went this far. Stronger stationary soul tools couldn't be manufactured in this way. This was because they were too strong and needed rare metals for their outer shells. However, adopting this method would undoubtedly help to conserve resources. He had finally finished. Huo Yuhao reported his results to Bei Bei, and was excited as he sat in the chair in front of Bei Bei, gulping down water. He was completely tired out over the past half-month. Bei Bei couldn't help but smile when he saw Huo Yuhao's excited look. After Huo Yuhao and the rest returned, they had helped him with a lot of work. He had been much more relaxed over the past half-month. Yuhao, when are you planning to leave since the experiments are done? Bei Bei asked. Huo Yuhao was puzzled as he asked, leave? Where to? Bei Bei was speechless and said, your memory is failing you. Have you forgotten what you promised Qiuqiu? They are helping us. We can't delay any further. Go and take a look. If it's some kind of precious rare metal, bring it back. Huo Yuhao recalled his conversation with Nan Qiuqiu that day and was embarrassed as he scratched his head. All right, eldest senior. I'll go over in a day or two. Bei Bei said, all right, you can go in 2 days' time. You should also rest over these 2 days. You can't spend all your time researching in the future. Look at teacher Shen. He's a soul tool maniac right now. Shen Zuan had become the busiest person in Shrek City. However, it was weird. He managed to become a titled Doluor amidst all his business. Recently, he was researching his special Class 9 soul tool. Once his research was over, he would become a true Class 9 soul engineer. He would even be stronger than most ordinary Class 9 soul engineers. Huo Yuhao chortled and said, I can't rest. I had some doubts during my cultivation earlier. I still need to ask Elder Shen about them. Eldest senior, I'll leave first if there's nothing else. I'll go to the Sea God's Pavilion straight away. If you want to find me, ask someone to go over there to call me over. After he finished, he quickly rushed out. To him, every minute was precious. His soul power had increased by another rank over the past half-month. He was now a Class 74 control-type soul sage. This increase was a result of his accumulation, as well as his research into the soul power of the beast god. As he was busy performing experiments, Huo Yuhao didn't manage to improve in his earlier cultivation. But now that the experiments were over, it was time for him to work towards improvements in that area. Yuhao, wash up before going. Bei Bei smiled as he called out to Huo Yuhao from behind. All right. Huo Yuhao acknowledged his words before he disappeared. Bei Bei wore a smile on his face and shook his head helplessly. He gently leaned back in his chair. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He pulled the drawer in front of him open and took out a small jade box. Pinkish lights flashed inside this box. It was given to him by the delicate Silk Immortal, and it was one of the 2 valuable treasures needed to save Tang Ya. However, the only problem was that the Blue-Silver Emperor had yet to surface until now. Xiao Ya, where are you? How are you doing? Bei Bei's expression turned gentler as he thought of her. However, he was deeply worried. It had already been so long since he had received any news of Tang Ya. Without a doubt, she must have been completely influenced by those evil soul masters and lost her awareness. Bei Bei really wanted to risk everything to find her. He had already secretly decided in his heart that he was going to leave the Tang sect to find her after the 3 soul engineer legions were fully equipped. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to bring her back safely even if he couldn't find the Blue-Silver Emperor. Huo Yuhao quickly went to Shrek Academy after leaving the Tang sect. The academy was considered to be in the inner city now. Although Shrek City had expanded, Shrek Academy hadn't. They only added an extra experimental ground outside of the Soul Tool department. Now that war had begun on the continent, even Shrek Academy wasn't completely safe. Apart from the students who were already in the academy, the number of new students was decreasing. If Shrek Academy was already like that, there was no point talking about other academies. Huo Yuhao went straight to Sea God's Island after entering the academy. When he was outside the Sea God's Pavilion, he first kowtowed to the golden tree before going in to find Elder Shen. Elder Shen looked much better than he had the last time they had met. He directly brought Huo Yuhao to his room to talk to him. Elder Shen. Huo Yuhao was delighted as he rushed in front of Elder Shen. My experiments have succeeded. We can start manufacturing low-tier Class 4 stationary soul cannon shells now. If we make them in batches, we should be able to surprise the Sun Moon Empire. Elder Shen was in awe as he said, "Oh. You've actually succeeded. You're indeed a genius. It's only been a few days, but Yuhao has already completed such crucial research. It's even something the Sun Moon Empire can't replicate." After Huo Yuhao started researching, Bei Bei had already reported his idea to Elder Shen during their regular meetings at the Sea God's Pavilion. Shrek Academy was no longer peaceful after the war started. The conference of the Sea God's Pavilion was meant to be annual, but it was now changed to regular monthly meetings. If there were other special situations, more of such meetings had to be organized. Don't tire yourself out, Yuhao. You look so worn out. Elder Shen smacked the dust off his shoulders and said concernedly. Huo Yuhao laughed in embarrassment. Bei Bei's warning fell on deaf ears. He was excited after completing his experiments, and was eager to tell Elder Shen everything about the mysteries of soul power. Elder Shen, wasn't I possessed by the beast god Di Qian, when I was resisting Elder Yi Shishui? Then, the beast god poured in his strength into my body from afar through spatial power. He descended using my body. Even though my passageways were damaged following that, I managed to understand some certain traits of Di Qian's soul power. When I did my research after that, I found out something strange. Huo Yuhao recounted his discoveries, along with the details of his experiments to Elder Shen. Elder Shen was still smiling when he first started, and nodding his head from time to time. He was very pleased with Huo Yuhao's curiosity. However, his expression slowly changed as he continued to listen. He performed high-pressure compression on his soul power and controlled it outside his body, creating a spatial distortion and allowing him to imitate Di Qian's black hole soul power. This kid is too brazen. Elder Shen, whatever knowledge the academy taught before only applies to Soul Doluor and below. There's no other knowledge beyond Soul Doluor. When one becomes a titled Doluor, what kind of changes will happen to his soul power? Is Di Qian's black hole soul power only applicable for ultimate Doluor? In other words, is he the only one with knowledge of it? Although they are both ultimate Doluor, Di Qian was evidently stronger than Elder Yi Shishui. If Yi Shishui doesn't use the death god, she won't be Di Qian's match in a direct confrontation. Elder Shen silently nodded. He sighed before saying, I didn't expect you to reach this level so quickly. Since you've asked, I guess it's fine that I tell you. You aren't wrong. When a soul master becomes a titled Doluor, his soul power will transform from its original fluid state to a solid state. That's the rank 90 bottleneck, and the Soul Master will obtain his 9th soul ring to become a titled Doluo. This is a very difficult bottleneck to break through for most Soul Masters. This is why there are so many Soul Doluo, but a scarcity of titled Doluo. There's a very big problem when one's soul power changes from a fluid state to a solid state. It's very difficult to cultivate soul power in the solid state. Let's not talk about those Soul Doluo who can't transform to become a titled Doluo. Let's only talk about titled Doluo. You've already sparred with many titled Doluo. Have you ever realized that even titled Doluo of the same rank can actually differ a lot in their abilities? Huo Yuhao immediately nodded and said, yes. I've discovered this point. Isn't this because of one's martial soul? Elder Shen smiled and said, that's right. It has some relation to one's martial soul. The stronger one's martial soul is, the better he is able to unleash the strength of it when he combines it with his soul power. However, you might know about something. The stronger one's martial soul is, the greater the amount of soul power during cultivation. This is because one's martial soul can contain a part of his soul power. The stronger a martial soul, the greater the amount of soul power it can store. One can store a portion of his soul power in his martial soul. Huo Yuhao was astonished. He really did not know about this. Elder Shen smiled and said, yes. You should be realizing it now. A soul master can unleash his martial soul true body if he's at least a soul sage. His martial soul true body can help him to store some of his soul power. You'll only learn such knowledge in the academy if you're at least a soul sage. You didn't realize it because the amount of soul power you have is already greater than other soul masters of the same rank. Don't forget, you have twin martial souls. Huo Yuhao pondered, then asked, does this mean that it is very difficult for a titled Doluo to improve further when his soul power reaches a solid state? Elder Shen smiled and nodded lightly, that's right, you're correct. The reason is also very simple. If your soul power is in the gaseous or liquid state, it can flow inside your body. Now, let me ask you, can your soul power still flow if it's in a solid state? Huo Yuhao was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously shook his head. Yes. How can one's soul power flow inside his body if it's in a solid state? Elder Shen said, your research is going in the right direction. In fact, the situation that you've laid out is exactly the soul core that only appears for titled Doluo. It refers to the core of soul power, the foundation of a titled Doluo. Soul power is compressed from a fluid state to a solid state, which is then immersed in the dantian of a soul master. That is the soul core. The soul core revolves continuously, and will absorb external soul power through the soul master for the soul master to use. Whether it is in terms of fighting strength or recovery ability, the soul master will be stronger than before. However, it is much more difficult to improve once one's soul power solidifies compared to when it's in the fluid or gaseous state. This is because a human can't possibly circulate solid soul power through his body. This is why a human can only dissect the solid soul power in his body into beads, before controlling the circulation of his soul power in the gaseous or fluid state. Not only is this process difficult, but it is also very dangerous. As a result, some soul masters who didn't think that they were talented would give up on further improvements after they became titled Doluo. They would remain at rank 91. This is very safe for them. It's actually so complicated. Huo Yuhao was shocked when he heard that. Elder Shen continued, saying, however, it's not entirely true that soul power can't circulate in one's body in the solid state. If a soul master's spiritual power is strong enough that he can control the beads of soul power to appear in the gaseous or fluid state, he can naturally circulate his soul power. Given this, solid, fluid and gaseous states could possibly exist together. To control one's soul power at this level, one can only be a transcendent Doluo. As a result, after becoming a transcendent Doluo, cultivation might actually become easier. At least there's a correct cultivation method. Of course, transcendent Doluo would still find it difficult to improve. There's a limit to how much soul power a human body can handle. It can still be compressed in the gaseous or fluid state, and it is already highly compressed in the solid state. It can no longer be further compressed. In order to allow one's body to handle more soul power, it comes down to the question that you asked earlier: why does Di Qian's soul power contain such strong spatial power? Di Qian has an 800,000-year cultivation. Although he has not lived in this world for 800,000 years, he has still lived much longer than us. Throughout his entire life, he has been understanding the mysteries of space and time, granting him his current cultivation. No one on the continent can compare to him in this aspect. His soul power, which is every little black hole that you saw, contains an immense amount of compressed soul power. It is stored in his body using time and spatial power, which enables him to handle it. Once a fight breaks out, he can unleash immense fighting strength by controlling his soul power. My current soul power is rank 98. All these years, I've been troubled by how to control that spatial power and stabilize it after compressing my soul power. I can perform some simple control of spatial power. Come, take a look. As he spoke, Elder Shen stretched out his hand, and a ball of yellow light appeared out of nothing in his palm. It was a yellow ball of light, which looked very real. There were thin spatial cracks around it. Earth-type soul power. This was clearly Elder Shen's solidified soul power. Elder Shen's eyes brightened. Suddenly, the spatial cracks that surrounded the ball started to widen, and the ball started to collapse inward. A small black hole was formed. A terrifying suction force dragged Huo Yuhao toward it, and he almost knocked into Elder Shen. After that black hole formed, it started to revolve at high speed. The origin energy in the air started to be sucked into the black hole. The yellow light on Elder Shen's body became more intense. The little black hole stabilized as it was surrounded by a layer of gentle yellow light. It stopped spinning faster, but revolved at a constant speed. This is roughly how it is in Di Qian's body. He uses his own soul power to cause a collapse in space, forming a black hole that can devour origin energy. Theoretically speaking, this black hole can continuously devour origin energy. However, there would be instability if I can't control it, which would eventually lead to an explosion. I heard Elder Mu mention that if an ultimate Doluo can complete a black hole and maintain it at a limit that he can handle, the black hole would be able to remain indefinitely. In that case, this black hole can even devour our entire continent. Of course, such a possibility is very rare. Elder Mu was only making deductions too. Such a black hole soul power would require immense spiritual power to be controlled. After it's controlled, it can be absorbed into one's body. I can complete such a process, but I can't transform my soul power in that way like Di Qian. Currently, there's only one black hole of soul power in my body right now. It's my soul core. The soul power that's flowing in my body is still existing in 3 states. If I can transform 1/10 of the soul power in my body into a black hole, I can create a second black hole soul core, possibly in my chest or brow, thereby becoming an ultimate Doluo. However, it's not easy. I've already tried many times, but I've always missed by a bit. Compared to substituting my soul power, creating a second soul core is easier. Elder Mu and Long Xiaoyao both took this path. I think Yi Shishui did the same too. Only Di Qian took a different path. This is why he is much stronger than most ordinary ultimate Doluo. This video will end here.